Hey everybody, Hans Albrecht here. Of course, I was a pro market maker for 15 years, and then for a decade after that, I managed a whole bunch of options income funds, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in options income for folks. Also, some downside put protect type funds traded as well. So, offense and defense. If you enjoy what I am putting out, please subscribe. And if you haven't, also look for that bell, hit the bell so you don't miss any of the videos. As always, this is for educational and entertainment purposes. It's your trade and your responsibility. So if you're okay with that, let's get on with it here. We're going to talk about a really, really cool stock again today. And I think it's starting to really move a little bit because the substance of this market is now changing a little bit more. We had a nice run up, which I called a few months ago. A lot of people did some great trades. We had one member who made $1.7 million on one of the trades. And that is amazing. I'm hoping to take their course soon. So, some really, really terrific stuff. But we've had a little bit of a sort of sideways move. We're really not getting the pullback that everyone's sort of been looking for because a lot of people aren't in this market. I'll talk about that in a moment. We're not getting that pullback because AI is just too big. And quite frankly, the backdrop is very, very positive. There's no recession on the horizon. This is looking rather good out there. And I think if you combine that with the promises of AI and what it's going to create, I think this sort of sets up for a very, very interesting market over the next year. And quite possibly, in my view, is going to be a glass half full kind of market where you're going to have valuations all over the place, but people are just going to be a little bit too excited. So we're going to talk about Tesla again, the ultimate meme stock, right? The all-time greatest meme stock is really back, and it had lagged for a little while, but it's really, really coming back because I think people are starting to recognize that the things that I've been talking about, that Elon is really the guy who can make things happen, and there are some parts of the business that are really kind of under the radar in a sense, if that's possible for a stock that is so widely followed. But it's cars, okay, a little bit. That's actually probably going to start improving a little bit, but it's robots, it's robotaxi, and very much so it's the power generation part of it. So let's look at markets. This week, we're pricing in very, very small moves for the market, which is kind of interesting, broadly speaking, because we have a lot of Fed speakers, we have this potential government shutdown, and then we have a lot of information on a lot of data on employment coming up at the end of the week. And we know that Powell is really focusing on employment right now, rightly so. That is the potential bogey out there, whereas inflation probably is a little bit toppy right now, although if we start to get this incredible push into productivity, into manufacturing, into this whole infrastructure build out, we could see a little bit of pressure there. But having said that, the market is really not pricing in very, very big moves, which is kind of interesting at this point. I guess it's just sort of used to this very low vol environment. We've had a VIX of 17, 18 with actual movement of maybe 7 or 8. That's an extremely wide gap that we call the volatility risk premium, and with really no big news on the horizon, right? We saw that last year with the election. We don't have that kind of event, although you could point to any kind of data point specifically for inflation and especially employment as almost every little important point that kind of represents that uncertainty that maybe the market is pricing in. But I think what it's also pricing in, as I mentioned on the weekend, is this melt up potential. We're seeing that play out in some of the option pricing, and you guys can go check out my video on Saturday as basically all of this stuff is starting to play out in option pricing as I predicted about 5-6 weeks ago. Let's look at sentiment. Isn't this amazing? Negative sentiment. We're seeing a lot of sentiment indicators quite negative out there. People are not believing in this rally, and this is actually very, very rare to see at market highs, pushing all-time highs. You tend to see this when things have been difficult, and that's not the case here, right? So very interesting picture that we're seeing. And Friday, we saw good retail sales not long ago. Here we go. Friday, GDP raised 3%. I'm not seeing the difficulty in the economy at this point. There are definitely layers and there are segments of the population that are not happy, not doing well with inflation, et cetera. But broadly overall, Main Street and Wall Street, unfortunately, are just kind of moving more and more apart. And reality is not going to necessarily be reflected in the stock market for a large segment of the population. So make sure you make the distinction between Main Street and Wall Street because it can be quite different. So let's talk about Tesla here. Look at this. Dan Ives, who I think is pretty good. I mean, I don't think he's like super, super deep or anything, but he's a big, he trumpets AI and he trumpets Tesla, and I appreciate it. He believes the market is underestimating the scale of Tesla's transformation. It's accelerating. It's AI, right? People think of it as a car company. It's clearly not priced like a car company. So there's more to it than that. But the AI and autonomous market for these guys could be a $1 trillion opportunity. And so you've got this sort of self-driving, you've got the robo taxis, and he's thinking this could reach 2 trillion, 3 trillion by late 2026. I don't mind that, right? Because it's the kind of company where you can't really put your finger on what is it going to make. And that for that reason, it could kind of do anything at this point. I've always said that this is a stock for the last 200 points. In fact, as we've talked about in the community, I've said this is a stock that could go to $50. It's a stock that could go to 1,000 or 2,000. We don't know. And that's why, as I'm going to show you in a couple charts here, that makes things very exciting, given that this is starting to be a fast money animal spirit type market again. As I've been warning for months, it's there, and now we may start to see the next leg of that as we go into the end of the year. Now, from a car standpoint, things are stabilizing. So I'm going to just throw that out there. From a car standpoint, things are stabilizing, and that's not so bad when they're considered a car company, right? So new car sales, surprising boost. Now, part of that is getting in before the effect of the tariffs start to play out. But the fact is that, big delivery beat, China's strength, they're starting to trend higher. Their inventory is very, very low, so they're starting to get good pricing for some of these things. We've got the EV credit pull through, so a few things getting pulled forward in the car business. But really, this is about humanoids, about other things. But right away, I want to talk to you about some interesting things we're seeing in the flows. Look at this Tesla call to put volume. We're starting to see massive trades in Tesla, starting to bet on that upside. Now, why might they be doing that? It's not about cars. It's about the potential for this to become very much an AI-driven mania. Believe it or not, there's still more upside to come, and you can see they're starting to play that. The vol's going up, right? That means option pricing is going up. The upside skew is going up. That means people are starting to reach for those calls, but not excessively so, right? There's always that difference, right? I like to see things getting excited, but when I see them extreme on the excitement side, then that could be a sign of a top. Look at this. Puts and calls volume. They are piling in. People are playing this name. And as a result, we can see they're actually excited about the stock as well. We can see that Mag 7 performance over the past month. Boom. Tesla has taken the baton, whereas over the past year, it really lagged. But now it's starting to play catch up. It's starting to play catch up to some other kind of risk on things like Bitcoin as well, which is interesting. Now, this is what I've often shown, is that we are getting into this level. I've been talking about this red line, this basically spot on the chart on my sort of animal spirit money. This is animal spirit money versus big cap tech money. And we can see that we're pushing over this red line here. We hit the 200-day moving average of that relationship. We pulled back into this area below here, which I highlighted this area. Now we're starting to pull away again. We pulled back just a little bit on those AI stocks. If we start to see 0.31, 0.32 on this, I think that could be a sign that we may be going into an area where there's really, frankly, quite a lot of air above us. So very exciting stuff. And if we look at ARK itself, now I'm not saying ARK or Cathie Wood are fantastic, but I'm using these as an indicator. There's also a biotech one. There's also a fintech one. I mean, there's all kinds of these funds that you should be watching to get an idea of how excited are people getting. Is money moving into sort of no earnings, massive multiple kinds of names like they did in 2021, like they did in the .com, like they did in other periods of manias? You need to recognize what kind of market you're in. And I think that's kind of really exciting, is that we could be getting into that crazy market. Now, humanoids, let's talk about the humanoids. Multi-trillion-dollar TAM, total addressable market. Essentially, any repetitive labor task can be done, right? So we're looking at, I've been covering robotics for 10 years. This could be a moment in time where things start to come to fruition, just like blockchain 2018, 2019. We're starting to see that play out in terms of the foundation for transactions for finance in the new world that's going to probably involve Ethereum and the blockchain. This is what's going to be happening in robotics as well, especially as the cost of robotics come down, adoption goes up, and that's a really big thing. So this is going to be used across healthcare, across many different sectors. And then the big one that I really like is the power block, right? So power block, this is really almost the most underappreciated part of the story. No one talks about it. I'm not sure why, because power is absolutely key. Look at WDC, which I recommended on a show 50% ago. WTC, STX, Seagate. Look at Micron, which is one of my favorite stocks right now. Reasonable valuation in the memory area on the semiconductor side for GPUs to do well. This is really a big thing. We're not going to have enough power. We're not going to have enough to satisfy what we're seeing in AI. And look at this. This is massive, right? These guys are involved. This isn't just, this isn't just a dream. This is actually happening out there. TransAlta in Alberta, megapacks to power. Victorian Big Battery, modernizing Victoria's electricity system. Massive energy storage monster that's able to power the future. These are these massive blocks. The Tesla power business is absolutely incredible because it can scale, right? This isn't some small startup trying to figure out some sort of battery or efficient product. This is a company that is actually doing it. They've sold 1 million Powerwalls. This is a massive, massive part of our future, and people are just not talking about it enough. These are all the little factors that could get us to what Ives is talking about, which is that 2 trillion, 3 trillion. Who knows? The sky's the limit. So I'm getting very, very excited about this. We're doing great on it in Leaps Trader, I've been I added a bunch more in the low 420s on Friday morning, in fact. And so here we are. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So come check us out. Check us out if you haven't already. And everyone have an awesome day. I'll be doing it. I'm going to try to do more of these videos. Maybe keep them a little bit smaller. So keep them a little bit shorter. So we'll see you guys soon.